Now, this next segment involves cold cases during the civil rights era. And I'm going to link an article particularly by I'm not going to pronounce this first name quite right, but Ngozi Monica Cole. And that's Ngozi Monica Cole. And she talks about cold cases, and in this article, she also mentions how to, or what to worry about when investigating these particular cases. And there's a lot involved here with the article, and I would say I always known about the idea of Southerners in terms of being like really active and killing a lot of blacks without any repercussions. But the idea of like digging into cold cases never really occurred to me, right? Because Monica talks about how some police departments, they'll resist actually just providing information, and the idea is that I don't know how this is even a thing, but they have active cold cases. So the idea here is that they are legally able or obliged to protect information in some of these cases. Not sure how that works, but when suspects or criminals are actually dead, privacy laws in many cases no longer apply for federal, right? And that means particularly if the FBI documents were generated during the initial investigation, then you can submit a FOIA request. For those that don't know, like J. Edgar Hoover, he was the head of the FBI, and he was already kind of like not motivated to investigate a lot of these crimes just because he was essentially just racist. But the idea of like southern states in general, there was a culture to resist federal oversights, and particularly around the investigations that took place regarding black people dying or being killed. And the idea here is that they sent the FBI. They sent a lot of investigators down there to do some, actual work. And a lot of times, the actual perpetrator would get off in a lot of cases, just due to the idea of just the culture around the town. So if there was a jury, then that jury would find somebody not guilty when, essentially everybody knows that that person was guilty. This, the FBI doing their investigations, a lot of times they did gather a lot of paperwork. And in many cases they just didn't do much but record things, right? And it sounds like this leaves us with a lot of information to dig through in terms of the idea of cold cases in general. And we probably, I would say we may have a lot of information to dig through, or a surprising amount of information to dig through. And in terms of the Renaissance, I think we need to have a understanding about where we come from, and that's based in reality, right? Because the idea of cold cases and investigating cold cases, it's not about digging these cases up and rubbing these cases in the faces of like Republicans who deny that racism is a thing today, but it's about having them come to an understanding about what the quote unquote good old days were, right? Because I think it's important to really carry out whatever justice that we can for the victims in a lot of cases. And I would say when it comes to these cases being brought up at any, for any reason, if it's true, it's true. I'm simply on the side of truth. But the idea here is that if there was an analogy, if there was like historical information about blacks being guilty of killing large groups of people, and I'm advocating for a return of that culture in any way, I think I'd have a responsibility to investigate that, right? And the evidence may very well lead to me having to reevaluate my understanding of really this culture or my ancestors in terms of in that particular time period in general. I think a lot of people are very much disillusioned about what the past was, and I think that if we can glue the world together, we would have to start with very real pieces of that puzzle. Pluto, Scorpio, and the 8th house, they represent the idea of investigations and investigators. In addition, they represent transformation and the things that we really don't want to see. Okay? So, I would say that this stuff, it can be harsh to really go through a lot of these things, but they may be very much worth it in terms of the value that we get through the transformations. And these are transformations really related to, anybody on, who relates more to the perpetrator or the victim. In either case, I'm against the idea of simply ignoring what took place and choosing to live in a fantasy world of any choosing.